When you speak of your desires before they are manifested, you scatter the seeds of creation to the wind, rather than planting them firmly in the soil of consciousness. I knew a gentleman in New York, a brilliant businessman by all external standards, who constantly struggled to bring his grandest visions into being. Despite his intellect and connections, his most cherished dreams remained elusive. One evening after one of my lectures, he approached me with frustration evident in his demeanor. "Neville," he said, "I've visualized, I've affirmed, I've done everything you've suggested. Yet my business expansion refuses to materialize. What am I missing?" I looked at him and asked a simple question: "To whom have you spoken about these plans?" His expression revealed the answer before his words confirmed it. "Well, I've discussed them with my partners, my wife, my colleagues. I've been gathering opinions to refine my approach." "There," I replied, "is the root of your failure to manifest. You have violated the principle of silence." I explained to him that the unmanifested state is like a delicate embryo in the womb of consciousness. Exposure to the harsh light of external discussion can cause it to dissolve before it has gathered sufficient strength to be born into objective experience. I advised him to cease all discussion of his plans and to commune only with his own wonderful human imagination, which is God himself creating in him. 3 months later, this same gentleman approached me after another lecture, his face illuminated with joy. Without speaking a word, he handed me a newspaper clipping announcing the very business expansion he had been attempting to manifest. "I told no one," he whispered. "I simply knew it was done." This, my dear friends, is the power of silence in manifestation. When you learn to still the external conversations and the internal dialogue of doubt, you become aware of signs that your manifestation is moving from the realm of imagination into the world of form. Let me explain the mechanics of this process. Every desire once conceived in imagination exists immediately as a spiritual reality. Your consciousness has already accepted it as complete in what I call the fourth dimension, the realm of spiritual completion. The journey of manifestation is not one of creating something new, but rather of allowing what already exists in spiritual form to clothe itself in the garments of physicality. This journey from spiritual conception to physical birth requires gestation. And just as an expectant mother does not need to announce her pregnancy immediately to every acquaintance, so too should you guard the sacred state of your unmanifested desires until they are ready to reveal themselves naturally. During this gestation period, if you maintain faithful silence, not an anxious, waiting silence, but a confident, knowing silence, you will begin to witness signs of your manifestation approaching. These signs are confirmations from the universe that the seed you have planted in consciousness is indeed growing, developing, and preparing to burst forth into your three-dimensional reality. What are these signs? They are synchronicities so perfect, so mathematically precise in their timing, that they could not possibly be mere coincidence. They are overheard conversations that seem to speak directly to the desire you have been nurturing in private. They are unexpected opportunities that align perfectly with your inner vision. They are resources appearing just when needed, people entering your life who possess exactly the connections or skills required for your manifestation. I recall a young woman who attended my lectures in Los Angeles. She had been visualizing a very specific home, a Spanish-style villa with a red-tiled roof, a courtyard with a fountain, and citrus trees in the garden. The price of such a home far exceeded her current financial means. But she faithfully applied the law of assumption, feeling the naturalness of owning such a home while maintaining complete silence about her desire. One afternoon, she found herself driving in an unfamiliar neighborhood due to a detour. As she rounded a corner, there stood the exact home she had been imagining in her mental scenes. Without thinking, she pulled over to admire it. An elderly gentleman was tending to the garden, and noticing her interest, approached her car. "Do you like this old place?" he asked. "It's beautiful," she replied, careful not to reveal the full extent of her recognition. The conversation that followed revealed that the man was preparing to sell the home, but dreaded dealing with real estate agents and open houses at his advanced age. He was looking for someone who would appreciate the home's character and history. Within weeks, through a series of events that can only be described as miraculous, the young woman arranged financing on terms that matched her budget precisely, and she acquired the home at a fraction of its market value. When she shared this story with me, she emphasized one crucial detail. I never told anyone what I was imagining, not even my closest friends. But once I began my mental work, I started seeing Spanish tiles everywhere. Magazine covers featuring similar homes appeared in my mailbox. Television programs suddenly showcased Spanish architecture. It was as though the entire universe was confirming that my assumption was being realized, even before the physical home came into my experience. This, my dear friends, is the pattern of manifestation science that appears when one practices faithful silence. Your external reality begins to echo the contents of your consciousness in increasingly specific ways, building toward the complete externalization of your desire. Why does silence possess such power? The answer lies in understanding the nature of consciousness itself. Your consciousness is the only reality. I cannot emphasize this fundamental truth enough. What you are conscious of, you manifest. When you discuss your unmanifested desires, you become conscious of their absence, of the gap between your current state and your desired state. You focus awareness on the lack, not the fulfillment. Furthermore, the opinions and doubts of others become entangled with your pure vision. Their limited concepts of possibility infiltrate your consciousness, diluting the clarity of your assumption. Remember, the world is yourself pushed out. Others merely reflect back to you your own states of consciousness. If your consciousness is contaminated with doubt, the world will dutifully reflect that doubt back to you in countless ways. In silence, however, you maintain the purity of your vision. You commune directly with your own wonderful human imagination, which, I remind you, is God Himself in action within you. In this sacred silent communion, there is no contradiction, no doubt, no limitation imposed by conventional thinking. There is only the pure creative power of I am, declaring what is true. Consider the wisdom in the biblical instruction. Go, tell no man. After healing the leper, Jesus commanded him to say nothing of what had occurred. Was this mere modesty on Jesus' part? No. It was a profound spiritual instruction related to the law of manifestation. The transformed state, the healed condition, needed to root itself firmly in consciousness before exposure to the doubts and contrary beliefs of others. Similarly, when Peter, James, John witnessed the transfiguration of Jesus on the mountain, they were instructed to tell the vision to no man until the Son of Man be risen from the dead. The vision, the revealed spiritual reality, required protection from the limiting beliefs of the unenlightened mind until it could fully manifest in the world of form. I urge you to adopt this same sacred silence regarding your own transformations and manifestations in progress. When you feel the naturalness of your desire fulfilled, seal it with silence. Know within yourself it is done. Then move through your days alert but relaxed, watching for the signs of your manifestation approaching. The signs will come. They always do, for it is law. Not wishful thinking, not vague metaphysics, but immutable law as exact as mathematics. The signs follow the faithful practice of silence with the same certainty that day follows night. A gentleman once approached me after repeatedly failing to manifest a significant career advancement. I've been affirming my new position for months, he explained, but nothing has materialized. Upon questioning him further, I discovered that he had been discussing his techniques with colleagues, explaining to his wife each evening how he was using the law of assumption to secure the promotion, even journaling extensively about the process rather than the completion. I advised him to cease all discussion or analysis or focus on the how of his manifestation. Instead, I instructed him to capture the feeling of already occupying the new position, to fall asleep each night in that consciousness, and to remain completely silent about it to everyone. Within 3 weeks, he began noticing peculiar coincidences. His current supervisor was unexpectedly transferred to another department. A project perfectly suited to showcase his unique talents landed on his desk. A senior executive who had never spoken with him previously began engaging him in conversation in the elevator. He recognized these as manifestation signs, the bridge of incidents constructing itself to lead to his desired end. 2 months after embracing the practice of silence, he was called into the director's office and offered precisely the position he had been imagining, at a salary exceeding his original assumption. The most revealing aspect, he later told me, was that during the meeting the director used phrases that were almost identical to those I had been hearing in my own imagination. It was as though I had scripted the entire conversation in advance. Indeed, he had done exactly that. For in the silence of his focused imagination, he had planted the seed that grew into that precise experience. The signs he witnessed along the way was simply the evidence of that seed breaking ground, sending up its first tender shoots toward physical manifestation. Now, my friends, let me address a question that may be forming in your minds. If silence is so crucial, how does one distinguish between the wise silence that nurtures manifestation and the fearful silence that stems from doubt or shame regarding one's desires? The distinction lies in your inner feeling state. The silence I advocate is not the tense silence of anxiety, wondering if your desire will manifest. It is not the embarrassed silence of one who fears ridicule for their ambitions. Rather, it is the peaceful, confident silence of one who knows that what they have assumed in consciousness is already accomplished in spiritual reality and must, by law, project itself into physical experience. This silence is suffused with gratitude. It is as natural as the silence of one who, having deposited $1 million in the bank, feels no need to repeatedly announce their wealth to others. The knowing is enough. The inner acknowledgement is complete. In this state of grateful knowing silence, you carry yourself with a quiet confidence that others may notice but cannot quite define. This itself becomes a sign of your manifestation in progress, this subtle shift in your bearing, this unshakable certainty that permeates your being. I recall a dear friend who had spent years struggling with financial scarcity. After attending my lectures, she began applying the principle of silence to her manifestation of abundance. Rather than continuing to discuss her financial difficulties with friends and family as had been her habit, she assumed the consciousness of wealth and held her silence. She reported to me the remarkable shift that occurred, Neville, within days of my new practice. I began finding coins on the sidewalk, pennies at first, then nickels, then dimes and quarters. A rebate check I had forgotten about arrived in the mail. A client who had owed me a small sum for months suddenly paid their invoice. These were small amounts, to be sure, but I recognized them as signs confirming my new state of consciousness. She continued her faithful silence, neither boasting of these initial signs nor discussing her practice. The signs accelerated. A distant relative sent her a birthday gift of $500, something that had never occurred previously. She was offered a project at work that came with an unexpected bonus. A property she had invested in years earlier, which had been sitting stagnant in value, received a purchase offer well above market price. Within 6 months, her financial situation had transformed completely. The fascinating aspect of her story was that each manifestation sign seemed to be calibrated perfectly to her expanding capacity to accept abundance. The universe did not immediately drop $1 million in her lap, which might have overwhelmed her consciousness and been rejected as impossible. Instead, evidence of her shifting financial reality appeared in graduated steps, each one expanding her acceptance of prosperity until the full manifestation of abundance became her natural state. This pattern of graduated signs is common in significant manifestations. The universe, which is really your own wonderful human imagination, operating beyond your conscious awareness, knows exactly how to build the bridge of incidents that will carry you from your present state to your desired state in the most natural manner. Your task is simply to maintain the assumption of the wish fulfilled and to honor that assumption with faithful silence, watching with alert interest as the signs multiply around you. Now there is another dimension to this practice of silence, that we must explore the silencing of the internal voice of doubt and contradiction. For many, this inner voice is far more destructive to manifestation than any external discussion could ever be. You may refrain from speaking of your desires to others, yet maintain a running commentary within your mind that contradicts the very state you are attempting to assume. This internal argument must be silenced if your manifestation is to proceed unimpeded. Remember the biblical injunction, let the weak say, I am strong. Not I will be strong, not I am becoming strong, but I am strong, the full acknowledgement of the desired state as an accomplished fact. When the internal voice argues, but you are not strong, you are weak, true silence consists of gently but firmly refusing to entertain this contradiction. A useful practice is to respond to all internal doubts with a simple statement. That may be true in the world of shadows, but in the reality of my consciousness, where creation actually occurs, I am precisely what I have assumed myself to be. Then return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. This internal silence, this refusal to argue with your manifestation creates a vacuum that must be filled. Nature abhors a vacuum, and into the quiet space created by your silenced doubts will flow evidence of your new reality. A distinguished physician who attended my lectures in San Francisco shared with me his experience with this practice. For years he had struggled with an inner voice that constantly reminded him of his humble beginnings, suggesting he was an impostor in his profession despite his credentials and accomplishments. After learning the principle of silence, he began systematically refusing to engage with these thoughts. Whenever the doubtful inner voice spoke, he would acknowledge it briefly, then firmly turn his attention to the consciousness of being an exceptional, confident physician beloved by his patients and respected by his colleagues. The external signs were remarkable, he told me. Within weeks of adopting this practice of inner silence, I received an invitation to speak at a prestigious medical conference, something I had always desired but never been offered. A journal published an article I had submitted months earlier and had nearly forgotten about. Former patients began referring their friends and family to my practice in unprecedented numbers. The most striking sign, he continued, came when a senior colleague who had always been somewhat cold toward me stopped me in the hospital corridor and said, I don't know what's different about you lately, but your diagnostic insights have been exceptional. I find myself looking forward to our consultations. Nothing in my technical abilities had changed. What had changed was my consciousness. And the science confirmed that my inner silence was bearing fruit. This, my friends, is the pattern you will observe in your own life when you practice both external and internal silence regarding your manifestations. The signs will come with increasing frequency and specificity, confirming that the seed planted in imagination is growing toward its inevitable expression in reality. Now, allow me to address another aspect of silence and manifestation science that is seldom discussed but tremendously important. There will be times in your practice when, despite your faithful silence and consistent assumption, the external world seems to move in precisely the opposite direction from your desire. This apparent contradiction is itself a manifestation sign of the highest order, though few recognize it as such. When your external reality appears to worsen after you have assumed your wish fulfilled, it is evidence that the old structure of your life is being dismantled to make way for the new. This is what the Bible refers to as the shaking of the foundations, the necessary reorganization of your affairs that must precede the establishment of your new state. I recall a woman who had applied the law to manifest a happy marriage after years of disappointment in relationships. Upon assuming the consciousness of being happily married to a loving, compatible partner, she maintained perfect confidence about her inner work. Within weeks, her current relationship, which had been stagnant but comfortable, suddenly dissolved in a series of unexpected conflicts. Her living situation changed abruptly, forcing a move. A job opportunity arose requiring relocation to another city. Friends expressed concern, seeing only the apparent dissolution of her life's stability. Had she broken her silence and engaged with their concerns, accepting their perspective of tragedy and loss, the bridge of incidents would have been interrupted. Instead, she recognized these dramatic changes as necessary components of her manifestation, the clearing away of structures that could not support her new state of consciousness. She maintained both her assumption and her silence, watching with alert interest as events unfolded. Within 6 months of this apparent collapse of her previous life, she had met and married a man who embodied every quality she had included in her assumption, in circumstances that could never have manifested had her previous relationship, location, and employment remained intact. The lesson here is profound. The signs of your manifestation may include apparent setbacks that are in reality the perfect path toward your desire's fulfillment. In silence, you develop the wisdom to recognize these signs correctly, neither resisting them nor interpreting them as failure of your manifestation. This brings us to a critical understanding about the practice of silence, of manifestation science. The ultimate purpose of this practice is not merely to obtain the things or circumstances you desire, but to develop a direct first-hand knowledge of how creation works. It is to experience yourself as the creative power of the universe, to know yourself as God in action. Each time you maintain faithful silence and witness the signs of your manifestation unfolding in perfect order, you deepen this knowledge. It becomes not merely an intellectual concept, but a lived experience, as real and undeniable as your own hand before your face. With each successful manifestation, your consciousness expands. What once seemed miraculous becomes natural. What once required careful practice becomes spontaneous. You move gradually from the consciousness of applying techniques to manifest desires to the consciousness of being the manifestation power itself, expressing naturally through all aspects of your life. Consider the development of any skill, playing the piano, for instance. The beginner must consciously think about each note, each finger placement. With practice, the conscious effort diminishes until the accomplished pianist plays complex compositions without thought, the music flowing through them as a natural expression of their being. So it is with manifestation. The conscious application of technique, the deliberate assumption of the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the disciplined maintenance of silence eventually gives way to spontaneous creative expression. You no longer use the law. You experience yourself as the law in operation. The observation of manifestation science plays a crucial role in this development. Each sign you recognize is confirmation not merely of your specific desire's progress, but of the broader truth of your creative nature. Each sign strengthens your conviction, not in the law as something external to be applied, but in yourself as the creative principle in expression. I knew a man who began his study of the law with small manifestations, parking spaces, unexpected sums of money, specific encounters. He practiced faithful silence and became adept at recognizing the signs that preceded each manifestation. As his confidence grew, he expanded his application to larger desires: a specific home, a career advancement, the resolution of a long-standing family conflict. In each case, his recognition of the preliminary signs strengthened his conviction in the inevitable fulfillment of his assumption. After several years of this practice, I noticed a profound shift in his demeanor and his reports of his experience. He no longer spoke of working to manifest specific desires. Instead, he described living in a state of continuous creation, where his consciousness naturally expressed as harmonious conditions without deliberate effort. The most significant change, he told me, is that I no longer see manifestation signs as separate events pointing towards some future fulfillment. I now recognize that all of experience is a sign, a reflection of what I am conscious of being. The entire universe is a manifestation sign, responding precisely to my state of consciousness in each moment. This, my friends, is the higher understanding toward which our practice leads. The ultimate silence is not merely the disciplined non-discussion of specific desires. It is the tranquil mind that has transcended the need for external validation of its creative power. The ultimate recognition of signs is not merely noticing synchronicities that precede manifestation. It is the direct perception of all experience as the immediate expression of consciousness. Now, some of you may wonder, if silence is so crucial to successful manifestation, how are we to understand the scriptural injunction to make your requests known unto God? Does this not imply that we should speak our desires? The resolution of this apparent contradiction lies in correctly identifying who or what God is. God is not an entity separate from yourself, to whom requests must be communicated. God is your own wonderful human imagination, The speech that communicates with God is not verbal expression, but the language of feeling and assumption. You make your request known unto God by assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled, by experiencing in imagination the reality of your desire accomplished. This inner communication requires no words, no verbal or written expression. It is the direct impregnation of the subconscious through the medium of feeling. This is the true meaning of prayer, not beseeching an external deity, but communing with the creative power of your own consciousness through the assumption of the reality of your desire. And this communion is most perfect when wrapped in golden silence, undisturbed by the contradictions of external discussion or internal doubt. Let me share with you a personal experience that illustrates this principle with particular clarity. Many years ago, before I fully understood the law, as I now teach it, I desired to leave the island of Barbados and travel to the United States. The circumstances of my life at that time made such a journey seem impossible. I had no money, no connections in America, no obvious path to realize this desire. One night, in the quiet of my small room, I applied what I then understood of imaginative power. Rather than speaking my wish to others, or even formulating it in words within my own mind, I simply assumed the feeling of being in New York City. I felt the cool air of a New York autumn compared to the tropical climate I knew. I felt the solidity of pavement beneath my feet, rather than the familiar island soil. I heard the unique cacophony of New York traffic replacing the sounds of my island home. I maintained complete silence about this inner work. I told no one of my desire to travel to America, nor of my imaginative practice. Indeed, I scarcely acknowledged it consciously to myself after that night, returning to my daily routine without anxious attention to my manifestation. Within weeks, I began noticing unusual signs. A newspaper article about New York appeared prominently, though I had never sought such information. A distant acquaintance of my family mentioned their connection to someone in the shipping industry. Small sums of money came to me through unexpected channels. Had I discussed these signs with others, they would have seemed insignificant, coincidental. Had I analyzed them anxiously, trying to construct a logical bridge between these occurrences and my desired travel, I might have dismissed them as insufficient. But in my silence, I simply observed them with quiet interest, neither doubting nor attaching excessive significance to them. The signs accumulated. The seemingly disconnected events formed a pattern that, in retrospect, was leading unerringly toward the fulfillment of my desire. Within months, through a series of circumstances that appeared miraculous from the outside, but that I recognized as the natural unfoldment of my assumption, I found myself aboard a ship bound for New York, all obstacles having been dissolved through no conscious effort of my own. This experience and countless others in my life and in the lives of those who have applied these principles has convinced me beyond any doubt of the creative power of consciousness and the crucial role of silence in allowing that power to express freely. The signs of manifestation are always present for those with eyes to see and the wisdom to remain silent as the seed of assumption grows to fruition. These signs are not coincidences, not random events, but the logical, lawful unfoldment of the creative process initiated in consciousness. My friends, as we approach the conclusion of our discussion, let me emphasize more staying silent to the fertile soil in which your manifestations grow most vigorously. External silence, refraining from discussion of your desires and practices, protects the delicate seed of assumption from the potentially withering effect of contradiction and doubt from others. Internal silence, refusing to engage with your own questioning thoughts, maintains the integrity of your assumption until it manifests as objective fact. In this dual silence, you will indeed start seeing manifestation signs everywhere. The entire universe will rearrange itself to reflect the truth of what you have accepted in consciousness. These signs are not the fulfillment itself, but the shadows cast by the approaching manifestation as it moves from the realm of imagination into physical expression. Learn to recognize these signs without breaking your silence to discuss them. Acknowledge them privately as confirmation of your creative power. Then continue in the calm assumption of your wish fulfilled. The signs will multiply and intensify until the full manifestation stands before you as accomplished fact. Remember always, your consciousness is the only reality. What you are conscious of being, you must become. In the silence of pure assumption, undisturbed by external discussion or internal contradiction, this creative process proceeds with perfect precision according to law. I challenge you to test this principle in your own experience. Select a desire, perhaps something that has thus far eluded your attempts at manifestation. Formulate clearly in your mind the state you wish to attain. Then, in a moment of quiet relaxation, assume the feeling of already having realized this state. Feel the naturalness of it, the reality of it, until the assumption carries the conviction of reality. Then maintain your silence, both external and internal. Tell no one of what you have done. Do not analyze the process or look anxiously for results. Simply live from the assumption that what you have imagined is already fact. Watch with alert, but detached interest as the signs begin to appear in your world. Note them, acknowledge them privately, then continue in your calm assumption. The signs will increase in frequency and relevance, constructing the bridge of incidents that leads inevitably to your manifestation's complete expression in reality. This is the law, and it operates with mathematical precision for anyone who applies it correctly. The silence you maintain is not inaction, but the most profound form of action, the deliberate focusing of creative power without dissipation through speech or doubt. In this silence, you participate consciously in the divine creative process that is your birthright. You experience yourself as God in action, as the imagining power that shapes reality itself. There's no higher calling, no more worthy endeavor than this conscious cooperation with the creative principle of the universe. So I say to you with all the conviction of my being, stay silent, and you will indeed see manifestation signs everywhere, signs that confirm your true identity as the operant power of the universe, signs that validate your direct participation in the creation of your reality, signs that herald the imminent expression of your assumption as concrete fact in your world. The signs are the shadows cast by your approaching manifestation. The fulfillment itself, the complete expression of your assumption in physical reality, follows the signs with the same certainty that the body follows the shadow, that the object follows its reflection. In faithful silence, observe these signs with gratitude and continue in confidence in the perfect operation of the law. Then when your manifestation stands before you as accomplished fact, you may speak of it, if you wish, not as something gained through technique or effort, but as the natural expression of what you have been conscious of being. This is the mystery and the glory of your creative nature. This is the practical application of the highest spiritual truth. This is the law that sets you free from limitation and reveals you to yourself as the divine creative power in expression. Stay silent, watch for the signs, and know beyond all doubt that what you have assumed in consciousness must manifest in your experience. It is done.